Thank you so much, everybody. So this is my disclosures. So the only one that's really relevant here is that this was a project that was funded by an ACS and SAGES grant. And so this is the project that I'll be talking about. I also have to use these 7 seconds to say that I forgot the slide to thank all my contributors. So for all of you guys in the room, I'm so sorry. I was trying to create this talk for 5 minutes. So I think one of the biggest things that I kind of wanted to start off with is, why do we develop this Fundamentals of Leadership Development course? And I think it really was the thought of building effective leadership and to increase equitable and inclusive excellence in academic surgery. So a very similar theme to what our previous speaker was talking about. And so I think many of you guys have probably seen some of these graphics, but when you're looking at minorities and gender representation in surgery, the amount of equitable advancement is really disparate. And so when you look, and people sometimes will say, well, you just haven't given enough time for people to catch up. But really, demographic inertia doesn't really alone explain why there's these achievement gaps in gender and race. And so actually for women, given the current rate of progression and promotion, it would really take about 100 years to reach gender parity, which is a lot of years. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to recognize that surgical diversity is synonymous with surgical excellence, and how can we as surgical leaders really enhance this across all of our programs, our institutions, and our national organizations. So there's a lot of research that shows that surgical excellence really leads to more innovative, better clinical outcomes, better patient-centered care, among just very small snapshot of things, as we've heard from the presentations in this room today. So with that goal, we developed this Fundamentals of Leadership Development curriculum that really focused on 3 key aspects. So the first one is diversity of surgical leadership, so increasing the pipeline within surgery, healthcare equity, finding areas of improvement within our own healthcare institutions, and conflict negotiation within the DEI space. And so the way we formatted our course was very much like any online course if you've taken one through a college. There's a set of online modules that you would do on your own time that would be paired with an online discussion forum. That you can also engage and interact with other participants from the course. And then after the end of the online portion, you would actually meet in person or virtually to do some didactic small problem-solving sessions. And these were based in small groups. So you would meet with your small group of 4 to 5 people, and there would be a facilitator who would moderate these case-based discussion scenarios. And the theory was that you would then apply what you had learned from the online modules and create some takeaway solutions. So this is just a snapshot of what the online modules looked like. And so some of our key questions as we really created this curriculum were, how can we really create this lasting DEI awareness and integration at the leadership level? Because I think, as all of us know, that unless we change at the leadership level, this is going to be really hard for those of us, who are maybe less powerful to continue to implement. Some of the other questions I had around this course were, are the educational methods we're using actually working? So there's a lot of research in the DEI space that says that a lot of the interventions we do now actually have the opposite intended effect. So how can we create something that actually does what it's intended to do? How can we increase course compliance and completion? And how can we measure behavior change over time in surgical leaders as they complete these courses? So to that end, so this is data from the first cohort of participants that we had in 2021. So this was peak pandemic time, if you will. So we had 79 participants who registered for the first iteration of the course. So interestingly, most of them identified as URAM, and 57% of them currently held a leadership position. 75% of them were really willing to be randomized into either 2 cohorts. So a longitudinal cohort, which you took a 2-hour course over the course of 4 weeks, or a intense didactic course, which took over the course of 2 days in 4-hour sessions. So we really had equal participation in both courses. And then we looked at some of the quantitative and qualitative data that came out of this. So interestingly, but maybe not surprisingly, we found that course engagement was really higher in the intense course. So you can see from the median time spent in the online modules and the didactic session participation, they were really higher in the intense course. I think some of this probably had to do a little bit with surgeon scheduling. As you know, surgeons are pretty busy people. And so I wonder if that kind of accounted for some of this time discrepancy. So when we looked at the feedback for the online modules alone, overwhelmingly, it was very positive. So we asked a couple of different things, but most participants either agreed or strongly agreed on a Likert scale that the course really met their objectives and that they were able to gain additional DEI-related leadership skills throughout the course. I think this feedback from the virtual didactic section is even a little bit more interesting. So I think most people felt very safe when they engaged with other participants in the space, which I think is really important when you're talking about some of these sensitive issues. I think some of the questions were really geared towards trying to figure out if participants would prefer one version of the course over the other. I don't think my mouse is working. Oh, here it is. And so it's really interesting that the responses are sort of mixed. So I think people who took either the intense or longitudinal course actually liked the version of the course they took, which was really helpful. And I actually think that nobody cared that the course was virtual, which I was kind of surprised by. I thought more people would have wanted to do the course in person. But in reality, actually, people had a really great experience, even virtually online. And when we looked at participant confidence on objectives and topics after the course, most people reported that they were somewhat or completely confident on the topics that we had presented. And so these are just some representative quotes that people had said about the course in their post-course feedback survey. And some of the themes that we pulled out from some of this was just increased awareness of impactive bias and microaggressions, maybe having better practical solutions to intervene during sensitive situations, and then being able to recognize a little bit more of your own leadership style. And so ultimately, I think some of the key takeaways were it was really interesting that URIMs and female leaders are more interested in this type of leadership development course. I think the intense formatting, so a short course really had higher engagement for certain participants. A virtual course was really feasible. And I think the interactive nature of the course really facilitated learning between the participants. And hopefully, I think this will change participant leadership style. So currently in the future, we're doing some long-term additional qualitative interviews in the next 6 months to a year to really assess behavior change over time. Thank you so much.